That's right. All right, Andre, I think that we are good to go. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Hello, welcome, and good evening to everyone. I'm Andre McEwen, Chairman of the Tarrant Transit Alliance. We're very happy to have each of you here this evening. Welcome to the Tarrant Transit Alliance 2021 City of Fort Worth Mayoral Candidates Forum. We're looking forward to getting to know each of you a little better this evening. Briefly, a bit about the Tarrant Transit Alliance organization, where I'm the chair, Vice Chair Onyinye. We're a coalition of individuals and companies galvanizing support for public multimodal transportation across Fort Worth and Tarrant County. Thank you to our sponsor, Hugh Zolas. Thank you so much. If you would like to know more about us, Tarrant Transit Alliance, be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and sign up for our mailing list at tarranttransitalliance.org. Before this forum, we sent a questionnaire out to every one of our mayoral candidates who is running in Fort Worth and many more across Tarrant County. Some of the questions we're asking here today about public transit is a follow-up to these answers. You can find everyone's answer on our website, tarranttransitalliance.org. Rachel?
Andre, thank you so much. So I just want to say welcome to everybody again. So happy to be here. I want to tell you all a little bit before we get started about how you can access our Transit Voters Guide. So on our website, which is again, tarranttransitalliance.org, you can actually go and see the answers to our candidate questionnaire from candidates across Tarrant County. We've heard from over 60 individuals who are running for local office across the area. So just to show you where you go really quickly, on our website, you go to tarranttransitalliance.org and you see this great slider here. If you find this graphic here, you can actually scroll down and see all of the different cities that are represented in this guide. And so if you are a resident of Fort Worth, for example, you can just go in here and take a look at all of the candidates and how they've answered our questions about transit in Tarrant County. For TTA members, you are actually able to rate all of the candidates' responses. So you can say we're rating them based off of understanding and awareness, support, and their vision. And so we encourage you all to go in after the fact and take a look at what the folks on this call and others have to say about transit in our region. So a few other things that I want to let you all know. Candidates, we have explained before the call, but now to the people on the webinar, we will be muting you after the designated amount of time, and we'll have a countdown timer that is going to be in the back of my screen. So you should be able to know when that is. And that's what I have. Andre, would you like to go ahead and have the folks around the Zoom introduce themselves?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I, at this time, have the honor, privilege of introducing our mayoral candidates for the City of Fort Worth office. And I'm going to go down. This looks like it's by alphabetically, it looks like. And I'd like for you to give us a 1 minute, if you can, less than 1 minute introduction about yourself. And then we'll move right into introduction of our moderator, Mr. Christof Spieler, and then we'll move into the actual discussion. So first, we have Councilwoman Ann Zeta. Ann, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, but I would say that's not alphabetical order unless you're going by first name.
First name. I'm sorry. First name. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm
No
Ann
problem.
Zeta, and I'm really, really happy to be here tonight. I think that Rachel indicated that we're just supposed to say hello and not go into a big introduction of ourselves on this introduction. So I will stick to the rules and just say I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited about this forum, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next, we have Councilman Brian Byrd. Dr. Byrd.
Andre and everybody, thanks for having us on tonight. And looking forward to the discussion. I always learn a lot. All of these forums, I always learn a lot, and I'm sure this will be no different. So thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Byrd. Next, we have DC Caldwell. DC.
I was just reviewing the voter guide and kind of surprised at how you did the star ratings. Glad to be here, though.
Thank you, DC. Next, we have Deborah Peoples. Deborah.
Shucks, that is an alphabetical order. Hi, everybody. I'm Deb Peoples, P-E-O, not P-A or P-E, and I am excited to be here. So, Maddie, you're probably next.
Well, it looks like I'm gonna move it to the way it is alphabetically. Cedric, I'm changing up a little bit here. I apologize. Cedric Kanyina, and if I got that wrong, correct me, Cedric.
I don't think he's on.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Byrd. Chris Rector. All right.
I don't think he's on either.
Okay, Maddie Parker. Maddie, how you doing? Talk to us.
I'm good. How is everybody? Good to see you, even though it's a little square. Maddie Parker here. Excited to have a conversation on transit and transportation. And like everybody else, I'll yield my time. We'll keep going here.
Thank you, Maddie. Steve Penate. If I got that wrong, Steve.
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Super excited to be here and very honored to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you, Steve. And Mylene George could not be with us this evening due to unforeseen circumstances. So thank you to each of you who are looking to serve this city in the capacity of mayor. Looking forward to the conversation tonight about transit. And with that said, next I'll introduce our keynote moderator, Mr. Christof Spieler. Christof is a vice president and director of planning at Hewitt-Zollars, where he does land use, transportation, and open space planning across the United States, and a senior lecturer at Rice University. He's also author of Trains, Buses, People, and Opinionated Atlas of Transit. As a board member of Houston Metro from 2010 to 2018, he initiated a blank sheet redesign of the entire bus network. He is currently working with Trinity Metro on their system redesign, A Better Connection. And let me just say on a personal note, I had the opportunity of meeting Christof during my tenure on formerly the Fort Worth Transit Authority, now Trinity Metro. And we served in various capacities together on committees, as well as at APTA, American Public Transportation Association. And it was a pleasure learning from Christof, his knowledge base and expertise, and really most importantly, to everyone, his passion for creating sustainable systems that support better connections within the United States. So Christof, thank you for being here, and we'll turn it over to you, Christof.
I'm very happy to be here and very excited about having a conversation about transit in Fort Worth and Tarrant County and the overall Metroplex. So just to give a little bit of an introduction here, this region has seen some remarkable expansion of transit over the last 25 years. We have a large connected regional rail system. We have collaboration among multiple transit agencies connecting the different cities and the different counties together. And we have things like the picture you see behind me, some really wonderful modern intermodal transfer hubs that tie the system together. At the same time, though, if we go to the next map, there are some real gaps here. Only about 3% of the residents of the Fort Worth, Dallas area live within walking distance of frequent transit, of buses or trains that run every 15 minutes all day, so that you really don't have to worry about a schedule. So the transit experience here is still very much an experience of waiting for infrequent service and having to plan your life around when transit is available. We have some real gaps in getting people to transit. We have missing sidewalks. We have bus stops with minimal infrastructure, which can be a horrible situation to wait in the August sun. And we still have some parts of the Metroplex that have no transit whatsoever, places that people want to get to that have no transit connections, including places like Arlington. So there are clearly real gaps in how the transit network serves this region. And so that's where we want to start. Our first question to all of you is, what do you picture as a city that has good transit? And how do you see the future of public transit in Fort Worth? And we'll give each of you 2 minutes to answer this. And we'll start with Deborah Peoples.
So thank you, Christof. So let me just start by saying there's a great Fort Worthian, Bill Horton, said we can either keep doing the same thing and getting the same result. And so I'm going to tell you, we are at a pivotal moment in the city of Fort Worth. We are, one of the fastest growing cities in this region, with the 12th largest city. And we have got to go in a new direction with transit. We can't continue along this same pattern. And so I know we're going to talk about it later, but I believe we have to be a visionary city. We're going to continue to recruit people and want people to move to us, to here and to Fort Worth. And to do that, we're going to have to continue to develop high capacity and premium services for folks. We're going to have to improve the existing services that we have. And let me just say, we're going to have to make it easier to use. I like to talk about, I worked in telecommunications, and it was that last mile of delivery. We've got to make sure that that last mile, that people can get to transit service quickly, and that it's a meaningful experience for them. And so I'm just going to tell you, I believe that transit impacts everything we do, from access to jobs, from getting quality education, from reducing the poverty rate. And so I believe that transportation is the great equalizer in this city. And if we're going to make this a city that is welcoming and that continues to grow, we're going to have to be visionary and transitional in our thinking. Thank you.
Excellent. And next we will go to Maddie Parker.
Good evening, everybody. Nice question. I think for me, along the same lines as we are going to probably talk about some other questions in our questionnaire, is what should transit look like for the future of Fort Worth, and what are the things it needs to provide for our residents across Tarrant County and the city? I think it's access, it's jobs and economy, it's access to healthcare, education, everything that's centered around job opportunity, economic development. The other thing we're grappling with, and really everyone is this on-demand culture that we're living in. So meeting the needs of people based on the way technology has met needs, is people want it now and they want it quickly. And as Christof mentioned earlier, the dilemma we face with frequent transit opportunities, only 3% of the population, those are things we're going to have to really grapple with. So the future of public transportation is really answering that on-demand culture in a way that responds and makes our residents want to ride public transit because it works for their lifestyle. And then lastly is, I'd love for us in the future to be able to have discovered and coordinated all resources available to provide better public transit, that we're communicating clearly with multiple entities, and that maybe we have created a better advocacy plan to create those different funding mechanisms so that we can quit fighting about what if, and we now have created those possibilities because we've discovered those funding mechanisms, whatever they may be. And some of them were mentioned in the Transit Moves plan. I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Excellent. And next we will go to Brian Byrd.
Thanks for the question, everybody. And Christof, thanks for presenting at council, I think maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And I'm going to say something similar to the previous two candidates. There's an issue of equity and access that we have to think about, making sure people have access to jobs and education. We have world-class museums in our city. Does everybody have access to those? They should. They're here. Those museums are invaluable to us. And then there's an ROI piece for us when we talk about economic development. For me, it's a chicken and egg sort of a discussion, because on one hand, we need economic development to pay for more transit, given that we have an inverted tax base. And then on the other hand, we can't have more economic development without a more robust transit system. I've appreciated, your work, Christof, in a better connection, because it said, okay, let's take the current system and talk about how do we make it work better for us. And I think there was some, walk more, wait less type of general principle applied there. And we're a dynamic city, and so our transit system has to be dynamic. We have to continually reevaluate it, and I appreciate you guys doing that with a better connection. Lots more to talk about, but I'm sure we'll get to that in some of the other questions. Thanks.
Thank you. DC Caldwell.
City with good transit. Well, I've lived in a few of those, Dallas, Austin, here, Houston, and seen kind of the variances between the few. Good transit emphasizes one, multimodal transit, basically buses that you can bring your bike along on that take you to a train station that takes you to your ultimate destination where you ride the rest of the way. Might be one example, but the kind of future of public transit that I see is more with integrated information and technology with the common carriers. The common carriers would not be these giant buses that carry 100 passengers. It would be more like the Uber and Lyft and the Zip Zone, where you're taking a few passengers in a ride sharing setup, and where the passengers can basically, as they said, on demand, call for the ride, letting the central hub of our system know where they are and where they're trying to go, so that our routes aren't necessarily fixed by some commission that does what they think is best. Instead, where our trips are determined by the actual demand at any given time. I think that in my experience, that's what has worked best, where we're responsive to the present needs rather than what we think the needs should be, because they're not going to be uniform every 15 minutes.
Thank you. And let's go with Steve next.
Hey, so I think we're all on the same mindset here that we absolutely need public transit, especially in areas where of lower income people and so on. We have to get people in those areas the access like Miss Peoples was mentioning, to schools, to work, hospitals, and so on. And so at the same time, I also believe we can partner up better with the private sector as well in many areas when it comes to helping people access things like this. Nonetheless, Fort Worth is growing. I mean, we have so many new areas, and so at the same time, it's important how we grow with this in mind. And so I think in many ways, Fort Worth really hasn't grown, with public transit in mind. So it's very important that going forward, as we're growing, we have this in mind going forward.
Thank you very much. And finally, we will finish up with Ann Zeta.
Thanks for the question, y'all. I think that I took this question a little bit differently in the beginning of it, where you said, what is a picture of a city with good transit? And I was looking at specific cities, and Washington, D.C. came to mind for me. And I was happy to know that that's in the top 5 of the cities that Christof has identified as having good transit. It's not number 1, but it is in the top 5. And it's a city that I've experienced transit in. So, going to Washington, D.C., getting picked up at the airport and being put into an Uber when you can get on a train and take that train directly to wherever you need to go in the city is a fantastic opportunity. And so I really have appreciated the transit that's available in a city like Washington, D.C. In that place, it's actually faster to get places by public transportation than it is by car. And you can put it into your mapping app and realize that. What I see for Fort Worth and the future of Fort Worth is a city that has a world-class transportation system that the city like ours deserves. If we're going to be a world-class city, we need to have world-class transit. And that takes into consideration walkability, mixed-use development, new streets that are designed to accommodate different modes of transportation. So we have a multimodal system, and redesigning existing streets in order to support transit as well. As you mentioned in your introduction, we have a lot of incomplete streets. We have streets that don't have sidewalks. Every transit trip starts and ends with walking for the most part. And so we need to make sure that those things are connected. And transit is really important because it's something that is available to everyone. It's a mode of getting around that everyone can access, regardless of how old they are, regardless of what their ability is, and regardless of what their income is. So not focusing so much specifically on one class of people, but having a system that serves everyone and allows everyone to get around and moves large numbers of people in a smaller space is really important.
Thank you.
So we are going to have a brief, take a brief pause to hear from a brief commercial from the Tarrant Transit Alliance.
Hi all, my name is Haley and I'm from TTA. I hope you all are enjoying the Mayoral Candidate Forum that's happening right now. And I wanted to interrupt just for 1 second to let you know that TTA actually has a 2021 Tarrant County Transit Voter Guide that is available on our website at tarranttransitalliance.org. If you go there and go under the Stay Informed tab, you can drop down to the 2021 local elections where you can see candidates' answers about transit from the city of Fort Worth, Arlington, and other areas in Tarrant County. So go ahead on there, pop in, see what you want to know about each of these candidates, and make sure you make an informed decision come May. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the forum.
Thanks so much, Haley. All right, Chris, back to you. Christof, sorry.
Okay, so our second question. The Transit Moves Fort Worth plan suggested 3 different scenarios for Fort Worth's future transit. Scenario 1, incremental improvements. Scenario 2, aspirational outlook. Scenario 3, visionary city. And the question for you is, which scenario would you like to see in Fort Worth? And Rachel will tell us a little bit more about each of those.
Yeah, thanks. Just as a brief introduction to those who maybe aren't familiar with the Transit Moves Fort Worth plan, as Christof mentioned, there are 3 different scenarios. The first scenario is the incremental improvement plan, and that really is looking at how we can build a more efficient system with the funding that we have. So there are some slight increases that would improve connectivity, that would improve the way that we are really looking at how transit moves around the city. It's very much in line with a better connection, Trinity Metro's master plan redesign. So that is the first scenario. The third scenario that they presented, I'm going to skip ahead for a second, is the visionary city. That really, based off of the studies that they've done with various stakeholder groups, they asked, what could transit look like in Fort Worth if we were going to have all of the bells and whistles? How could we make this a transit city? And that's what the visionary city really identified. It has light rail, it has bus rapid transit, it has a series of, you can see over here, these little blue squares. These are all zip zones or smaller ways of point-to-point service. It has the gambit of what you might want to see in a transit city. The second scenario is the aspirational outlook, and that's sort of an in-between category. It's increasing funding a little bit more. You still have those zip zone areas. There's some light rail, but there's more bus rapid transit. There's more rapid transit. So that's sort of the difference. And I also wanted to mention that there is a fourth category that isn't here represented in these scenarios. The incremental improvements, aspirational outlook, and visionary city. And that is actually the draft recommendations that we have presented, not we, sorry, that Chad Edwards has presented to the city of Fort Worth based off of the Transit Moves Fort Worth plan. And that really is a combination of the aspirational outlook, scenario 2, and the visionary city, scenario 3. It's trying to get as close to that visionary city as possible, but with more of a reliance on bus rapid transit as opposed to light rail. And that's what I got.
Excellent. So we'll give you each 2 minutes to answer our question. And we have used a random number generator to get the order for each question. So you'll see the order will be slightly different, but as it turns out, the random number generator picked the same candidate first this time. So we will start with Deborah Peoples.
Okay, I like that because I like to lead. I believe in transformational leadership. So I think, you know, I said in the last thing, I picked the visionary city because great cities have great transportation systems. You know, I love the fact that Councilwoman Zeta talked about DC. And if I said mind the gap, most of you on here know that I'm talking about London and getting on the tube in London. If we're going to be a world-class city, we have to have a great transportation system. And it's not just for low-income neighborhoods. We got to rebrand and reimagine transportation because it's for the family that lives in an affluent neighborhood that's paying $800–900 just to operate their car to drive to work. What if we could get that person to get on a great transportation system, spend $80 to ride to work all month? There's more disposable income. It's for, you know, the students, it's for all of us. And so one of the things, the reason I like the visionary city is because it takes that into account. It takes every citizen into account. And then the final thing, I will tell you, we are competing with the world. We are just not living in our own ecosystem. We are competing with cities all over this country, and we cannot continue to lag behind other cities like Dallas and Houston and Austin, who spend all kinds of money on transportation. We only have 2 Fortune 500 companies here. Dallas has 34, and they look at things like transportation and quality of life. We cannot afford to do anything other than become a visionary city. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's go with DC Caldwell next.
So as I review those scenarios, I look at the existing routes and realize that we pretty well have to work on the incremental improvement because we do not have jurisdiction over all the areas of interest in our region. We have Haltom City, Watauga, Keller, Saginaw, Eagle Mountain, Crowley, Burleson. All those suburbs, we cannot control them. They are outside of our jurisdiction. We have to work with them, and that requires a step-by-step approach, which would be scenario 1, incremental improvements. Meanwhile, incremental improvements rides right along with the idea that we should never dismiss a small group of dedicated people as having a powerful influence, because history has shown that that's the biggest thing that always has, a small group of dedicated people. And each of us can make incremental improvements. Meanwhile, in manufacturing, they have batch processing, they have lean manufacturing. Moving people from place to place is not something that needs to run on batch processing, where you have people waiting for long periods of time until they can go again. In lean manufacturing, you get one person where they need to go, and the next person where they need to go, and the next person where they need to go. That's more the ride sharing system we have, and having our bus and train stations set up to be more friendly to ride sharing would be helpful.
Thank you. And let's do Brian Byrd next.
Thank you, Christof. So I'm going to be careful what I commit myself to here. So let me just talk about it in sort of the way I would want to think through this and discuss it. And the first is we always have to think about investment in terms of ROI. Decision makers need data. You know, a good example is how are we measuring the effects of the changes that we've currently made? In the Las Vegas Trail area, when we doubled the frequency of the bus routes through there, are more people working? Have we been able to shift the poverty rate or the unemployment rate in there? We need to be able to measure things that we then take to decision makers. Secondly, we have to be able to cast vision in coordination with other entities. You know, so on the economic development piece, you know, when we make the decisions on transit, everybody that's working on economic development needs to have a seat at the table. I think this is where TTA is particularly helpful. But this is where the chambers need to be. Visit Fort Worth, city council members, board members for Trinity Metro. And we say something like, look, we're going to go after 2 corporate big time relocations. And we want transit to be a part of this. Council members, will you commit to this, right? And it comes down to very, very difficult decisions, such as this one. Instead of getting to lower the tax rate 2.5%, you're only going to get to lower it 2%, right? And in exchange for that, we're going to work with our other partners and bring in corporate relocations here, so that 5 years from now, people look back on the decisions that we've made and they say, it was tough 5 years ago, but the decision that they made is helping us now. I was going to add in innovation, but I'll yield my 4 seconds.
Thank you. So let's go to Steve Penate next.
All right, so I will also go with number 1 on Dr. Byrd's point. I mean, he's right. We need people that are all involved to sit at the table when it comes to this. But look at this. Fort Worth is not built like London and or DC. I love going to those places. We're not those places. Our city hasn't been designed for transit like that. And so the people of Fort Worth are people who commute. It's a city that is very large and very spread out. And so a plan like the visionary Fort Worth plan is one that is going to require hundreds of millions, if possibly billions of dollars. While we need to improve, we have to focus on making sure we don't get in debt, number 1, and keeping our taxes low.
Thank you. Let's do Ann Zeta next.
Well, clearly I am on record for saying that we need to be a visionary city. I've been heavily involved in the discussion from the very beginning about the studies that have been done, and being a visionary city fits into my planning background. You plan for what you aspire to be. You don't just do incremental things because you don't have all of the funds available at this moment. So clearly we need to prepare so that we have the ability to build out the visionary system when those funds are available. There is a new administration in town that has not in town, but in this country, that has made it very clear that they are wanting to fund infrastructure and transit. And so being visionary and having those shovel-ready projects available to, when that funding becomes available, is what we need to be prepared to do. We have not been visionary in the past, and we have missed opportunities. I hearken back to the time when we had funding available to start a streetcar in Fort Worth, and we decided not to because we didn't know for sure whether we had the ability to fund that entire system. And what happened? That funding went away and it went to Dallas. So when we are not visionary in our plans, it doesn't require us to go into debt. It doesn't to have a plan that's visionary. That's not requiring us to do these things. You can take incremental steps. You can take aspirational steps and still have a visionary plan. But in order to be a world-class city that has a world-class transit system, you have to have a visionary plan.
Thank you. And let's finish up with Maddie Parker.
Sure. So I think if we want to be a visionary city, which anybody would be, and this is to be included in public transportation, I think it's really critical that we start with the money, right? Because that's always what it comes down to. So thanks to Transit Moves, you did an excellent job articulating this well. $2.8 billion in capital costs over 25 years, and then around $236.5 million in additional operating costs annually, which as articulated is a 182% increase. That's real money. Those are sacrifices, those are budget decisions. So how do you get to a visionary plan that reaches across 350 square miles across our community? It takes a really heavy hit with every single jurisdiction, every single level of government working together. As Ann articulated, if the federal government is writing checks for public transportation projects, have a plan, be shovel ready. But you also have to work with your state partners. And I think I've articulated this in the questionnaire about several of the scenarios for funding opportunities were well thought out in that Transit Moves plan, but I'm just concerned we're not coordinating on how difficult the lift would be. I think Fort Worth absolutely can create the right public-private partnerships. I consider TTA one of those, right? Advocating for something that this community cares about. So how do you really communicate better and create a plan that starts with the money rather than starting with the plan and understanding how difficult it may be to get there? And I'll close by saying, I want us to take care of those that need transportation most first. So I do think that elements of that incremental plan that Chad has articulated in front of City Council are important, because I think you're tackling getting people to jobs, healthcare, and education. And kudos to Trinity Metro in doing that in their partnership with VIA in specific areas. I think we just need to continue more of those things at the same time, considering what a visionary transit plan means for Fort Worth, Texas, and Tarrant County.
Excellent. So thank you all for those answers. And I think we're going to have another little commercial break.
That's absolutely right, Christof. Thank you so much. And we are going to hear again from Haley.
Hi all, it's Haley from TTA again, popping in. Still hope you're enjoying the forum. I wanted just to let you all know that if you're enjoying this and want to see more things as it pertains to transit in Tarrant County, give us a follow on all of our social media platforms, whether that be Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Tarrant Transit Alliance. You can see what's going on in the area, what we're doing as an organization to advocate for better transit in the county, and how you can get involved. So go ahead and check it out. Enjoy the rest of the forum. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Haley. All right, Christof, back to you.
Excellent. So what we are going to do now is actually have individual questions for all of you. And the way this is going to work is we have 4 minutes per candidate. And me and the TTA team have looked at your answers to candidate questionnaires as well as what you've said so far. And we'll ask you some questions based on that. We'll start with a question for each of you. You are free to take your entire 4 minutes to answer that question. But if you do feel like you have sufficiently answered it, I've got a list of follow-up questions. So if you get to the point where you are at the end of answering that question, we'll give you another one. And so again, 4 minutes each. And if you seem like you've gotten to the end of your first answer, I'll chime in with a second question. So let's start with DC Caldwell. So question for you is, you stated in the questionnaire that we need to prioritize needs before wants, and you identified transit access as a top issue. It seems like with what you're saying with growing population and congestion that there is a need for better transportation in Fort Worth. At the same time, you also said that you weren't interested in increasing funding for transit. So how would you meet this transportation need without increasing transit funding?
I believe that my concern was that I objected to buying higher capacity buses when really, most of our demand is more on the line of the individual passenger trip rather than running gas guzzlers that are mostly empty on most of their trips. My objection was to spending millions of dollars that would not be best spent to run frequent trips with mostly empty buses. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, I mean, if you look at transit agencies that operate both on-demand service and fixed route service, your 40-foot buses, at a reasonable load level, which some of the routes in Trinity Metro are definitely above that load level, you find that it is actually cheaper to provide those trips with a fixed route bus than to provide with on-demand service. So if we want to move to a more of an on-demand service, in the end, that actually costs more money. So how do you balance that?
You're saying it's cheaper when those trips are heavily subsidized because most of the on-demand trips have the passenger paying the bulk of the fare rather than the local government paying the bulk of the fare, which is what happens to be the case with the fixed route rides.
So in other words, what you're saying is on-demand trips with higher fares than would be charged for a typical transit trip?
The fixed route rides, that trip is going, even if there's one passenger on that bus who happens to be the driver. And I have been the only passenger on a bus in Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and looked at the emissions, looked at the fuel expense, looked at the fact that you're paying the driver. The actual cost for that trip is the same as the on-demand ride. It's just you might be charging a lower fare for it. The cost is still being expended. Either way, the cost is the same. The only difference is that for the fixed route fare, most of that fare is subsidized rather than in the on-demand fare, the government doesn't subsidize those as heavily, and therefore they end up costing more to the passenger who requests it, simply because they're not being as heavily subsidized. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And we have a couple of moments left. And another thing you mentioned was working with Suburbs. Can you tell a little bit about how you would work with Suburbs?
Well, in order to run routes into the suburbs, you would pretty well have to step on their toes or have them coordinate what they want the routes to be, or you could simply run an on-demand system, and an on-demand system that goes into the suburbs would not interfere with their jurisdiction any more than Uber or Lyft would.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Brian Byrd next. I'll start with another funding question for you. We know that the federal government looks for a local match on all transit capital projects. There's very limited federal funding for operations. And you said in your questionnaire that we need more transit funding, but you also said that that funding should not come from the Fort Worth General Fund. So what sources are you looking to for additional transit funding?
Yeah, I think particularly this coming budget session, it's going to be very difficult to look at the general fund for additional transit funding, given that we're anticipating that our commercial property tax base will diminish by about 4%. That's going to have to be made up just to get us back to level ground. The American Recovery Act that the president signed a couple weeks ago, maybe it was just last week. I'm losing so much track of time. I don't know what day it is sometimes anymore. Anyway, may help us there. There's something like $185 million that the city of Fort Worth could get. There's lots of strings on that money. We don't know exactly for sure what we will and will not be able to use that money for. So perhaps that could offset it. But it gives me a chance to tell a story. My wife works with human trafficking victims, and one night, all of our folks were busy or sick or out, whatever, and we had to go pick up a young lady finishing her, she worked at one of the sandwich shops up on Basswood Road, and we had to take her to her home in another part of the city. And so we got there and we're waiting for her to finish up at Subway, and it's about 10:30 at night. And I just got on my, transit app and plugged in where we were and where we were going and looked for what would the options be here. They're terrible. Basically it said, okay, walk 1.5 hours to this bus stop and, then get on this bus and then, then rent a bicycle. I mean, it would have taken her till the next morning. That was, I think sometimes like a physician, and which means we have to get the diagnosis right first, and then we can come up with the treatment plan. And that experience was helpful to me in the first mile, last mile discussion, and where I think rideshare / innovation can be helpful. I'm glad we're experimenting with zip zones. I almost said zip lines. That's what we do in the summer in Colorado, whatever. I'm glad we're experimenting with zip zones. I wish that COVID would not have inhibited our ability to really study those and see just how well they're working. My understanding is the ridership's been consistent on those, but it really hasn't taken off like we would like them to take off. Anyhow, I wanted to get a chance to talk about innovation and tell that story. I think I probably still have time for another question if you'd like.
Yeah, you talked about needing to communicate the need for transit, how to use it, and the benefits to the community. And you also talked about this involving a lot of hard decisions. So what do you think as mayor you could do to help communicate that and to frame those discussions about hard decisions?
Yeah, so the mayor has an opportunity to cast vision for how transit could be, how it could affect our city, how it could move us forward from an economic development standpoint. The mayor also has an opportunity to show how those of us who don't use transit don't realize how many people do and how many people rely on it. I learned a tremendous amount when Sal Espino said, okay, Brian, you're gonna take a ride with me on bus number 2. And it was packed. It was totally packed out almost the whole time. And I know Sal was choosing that line for that particular reason. But that was helpful to me because and this is a real challenge for us, when I talk to people in Southwest Fort Worth, most of the time they see buses, there's one person on it, it's a person driving it. And so the mayor needs to be able to cast vision for it and help bring clarity to what's going on there.
Thank you. Let's go with Steve Penate next. In your questionnaire, you talked about transit equity being measured by the amount of access all citizens have to transportation. And you said Fort Worth does not have this as it stands. And then you talked about the need to privatize transit. So if we privatize transit, private companies need to make a profit as opposed to a public entity. So they will probably be charging people more for transportation than a public transit agency will. How do you see that fitting in with the need for equity in transit?
Gotcha. So on that note, my mindset behind that was to reallocate our resources into the areas that really needed. Once again, I want to go back to Fort Worth really hasn't been designed as a place like other major hubs like New York City, Chicago, DC. And so where I was going with that is the following: is that we have to focus on the areas that really need it. okay, back to Dr. Byrd's point, okay? The last thing we want to do is have all this access, and we are spending so much money and no one's using it. And so again, okay, the Fort Worth, the mayor is the one who's able to set the culture in the city, the visionary, they lead the way. But look at this, it's going to be an uphill battle, okay, trying to get a city that has a culture. We love our trucks. You know, it's who we are. And so it's going to be an uphill battle to change the culture of who we are as a city. So what I would do is this, I would focus in the areas that's really needed most, making sure that we're working with every district, okay, and see the needs in those areas and how we can best reallocate our resources into the areas that actually need it. Okay, now again, a lot of areas in Fort Worth don't need it because the culture isn't there for it. And so I believe in so many ways, okay, visionary, okay, means we have to think, all right, what it's going to look like. So as we grow and it's something that we feel that Fort Worth needs, then we have to build our city for it via that way. But right now, okay, Fort Worth doesn't have the overall culture of public transit. Now, I'm not saying it's not needed, because it's needed, but it's very important where we allocate our energy, our resources, and our efforts.
Do you think that as mayor, you could have a role in starting to change that culture?
Okay, I think that any mayor does. Now, once again, look at this. At the same time, okay, at the same time, we have to understand, okay, what the public actually wants.
Thank you. And we will go to Maddie Parker next, and I'll ask you a similar question to what I asked earlier, which is, you talked about our on-demand culture requiring us to provide more on-demand service. But moving from medium ridership bus routes to on-demand service like zip zones actually cost us more per rider. So do you want to see that kind of shift? And if so, how would you pay for that?
Well, I think Trinity Metro has already answered that question as our transit agency, right? They've seen it as a risk worth taking to spend more money in their specific areas of zip zone. And I think, honestly, Christof, it's because they believe in transit is for people, right? They're trying to meet the need of people, getting them to and from, especially in areas where our job zones are higher and they have opportunity for our residents. Of course, it costs more money, and they've chosen to use their sales tax allotment out of their annual operating dollars to put towards those zip zones. And I think that's worth the city supporting. My concern, not dissimilar to some other candidates that have expressed it today, is that especially in an upcoming budget season that will be very difficult for the city, understanding what the impacts of COVID have been, any impact or any additional funds from general fund may be difficult. That being said, and I think I answered this in the questionnaire, I hope I did at least, that the right process for the general fund is very similar in a parallel path to all the city departments that ask for funds every year, zero-based budgeting, starting over and demonstrating. And doing that outside the process is unfair to our other departments. It's unfair to city officials, and it's unfair to city management. Now, to Trinity Metro's credit, they have absolutely worked alongside city leaders and city management to better that relationship. I think Trad Edwards, that's his role at the city, to make sure we're facilitating those conversations. And I think as mayor, your responsibility is to cast that vision on, we know we need to serve people better. I'm most concerned with those folks that do not have access to Steve's point, the big truck, we are that culture, but for those folks that do not have a vehicle, that rely on our public transportation system to get to and from everything that they need in life, how is our transit agency serving that? So I think all those things have to fit together. You're going to know better than any of us how much, what kind of expense that is required, right? And I think we need to rely on experts like you to make those decisions. But as mayor, I think having a transit agency we rely upon to make those decisions, which are already seeing those happen, a mayor and council need to support those decisions.
Yep. One thing you mentioned in your questionnaire was Lancaster and BRT, and you said that a traditional BRT line down Lancaster that doesn't encourage additional economic development is not a viable option. What's your vision for what that corridor could be in terms of transit?
Well, in my conversations during this mayoral candidacy and even before that, the folks that advocate for East Fort Worth, the folks that live there, have businesses there, they're the ones dictating, they are begging for more economic development opportunities. And I would just hate to see the city, Trinity Metro, or any agency come in and put a BRT line that runs straight down Lancaster without regard to economic opportunity for the residents and business owners along Lancaster. So my vision, quite frankly, is to working with that community all along Lancaster, along with subject matter experts, to say what is possible with some type of bus rapid transit line or new transit line down Lancaster that incorporates opportunity for economic development nodes or stops along the way that create additional opportunity along Lancaster. I think, and obviously I've said opportunity too many times, that's the operative word here, because without it, what's the point, right? What's the point of getting people from downtown Fort Worth to Arlington to spend their money there? We want them spending money in East Fort Worth along Lancaster. And if that's our goal, to focus on people, then we absolutely have to consider that. And I'm not, my description here is not based on my own expertise. That's in reading, understanding all the different leadership and different entities, including North Central Texas Council of Governments, and their conversations advocating for what that possible corridor should look like at Lancaster.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we'll go to Ann Zeta next. You've been part of multiple discussions at the city council level across the years for increasing transit funding. And so far that has not led to a major increase in transit funding. And you were talking earlier about wanting the visionary plan. What do you think it will take to get more transit funding in Fort Worth and the region?
Well, I mean, clearly transit funding is going to have to come from multiple sources. It can't all come from our general fund, as folks have talked about. We may be going into some challenging times regarding the amount of funding that is going to be available. But as far as what people are willing to consider, I think there is more support for the things that people are willing to consider than has been imparted today by some of the answers to the questions. The chamber has done some research and they have gotten responses back where people have voted by 90% to support public transit funding from general revenues. And when we look at our capital bond funding, which goes towards street maintenance, that can be enhancing those street corridors in order to incentivize and make transit work in those corridors better. So it's not necessarily handing money over to fund transit, but enhancing those corridors so that transit is more successful along those corridors. So that's available funding as well. 56% of Fort Worth voters have supported looking at a 0.5-cent sales tax to support transit. That came out of the the Real Estate Council's recent poll. Austin, San Antonio, and Houston have all found ways to support transit recently in elections in November. And they all realize that there is economic development that comes from funding transit. I don't have the numbers in front of me exactly, but from what I have read, for every dollar that's spent in transit, you get $4 in return plus 2 jobs. So this is a return on investment that is worthwhile. Can we do it all at once? No, we can't do it all at once, but these are the things that we need to take into consideration. And as far as bus rapid transit along corridors, it doesn't mean a bus going through a corridor and never stopping. there's opportunities along that corridor of bus rapid transit to have those economic development things. I've been involved in the meetings with the stakeholders along the Lancaster corridor, and that's exactly what they're looking at with bus rapid transit along that corridor, is having economic revitalization along that corridor as well, with those stakeholders involved in those conversations.
Excellent. And as another question, you talked about in your questionnaire about a top action would be to be prepared to take advantage of the opportunity for federal funding. What projects would you put at the top of the ask list for federal funding?
You know, this is a conversation that needs to happen with all of the entities. And, you know, in my role on the Regional Transportation Council, I work with all these elected officials in a 13 county region. And we have made some great strides in making sure that every single project that we look at to use that federal funding is looked at through the lens of transit. So there didn't used to be a little box on the agenda that RTC looks at that looks at what transit opportunities come from those projects. So the plans that Trinity Metro has done with a better connection, the plans that the city of Fort Worth has done with they're looking at the long range plans of transit in Fort Worth, all of those things need to be looked at together. The county is also studying the region and talking to their regional partners. The chamber is looking at this, the real estate council is looking at this, the city is looking at this. And the city is not the boss of all of these entities, but the city of Fort Worth and a leader in Fort Worth that puts transit front of mind and prioritizes transit will have a great ability to bring those partners together and realize the vision that more and more folks are saying that they want. And this is not about telling people they can't drive their trucks or drive their cars. It's about having a multimodal system so that people don't get mired down in congestion that will occur if we just continue to only focus on cars and trucks.
Thank you. And we will finish with Deborah Peoples, who already figured that out and unmuted herself. Again, the funding question. You talked about increasing transit funding. You said you were especially supportive of light rail. Where do you think the funding sources are that we should be looking at to do that?
So, Christof, let me just start by saying, I need to start this first and tell you that we need to listen to our citizens. So Ann and I are going to tag team on this one. The citizens of Fort Worth want the vision city. 75% of respondents to a study said they want a vision city. That's our job as leaders, to be transformational, listen to our citizens and work toward that. And so my job is to work with any agency where we can find the money. We're going to work with the federal government. We talked about that. We have a president that is interested in giving us money. And so great leaders don't sit up and look for roadblocks and obstacles. Great leaders get together with all the subject matter experts and say, I have a plan and this is where we want to go. Now, how do we get there? And so I can't tell you that I got, $4 billion here, but I would pull together all the subject matter experts and let's work on that. And Mr. Byrd talked earlier about he was sitting waiting to pick up a young woman, and he went to his app and he saw that that was an impossible journey for him, for that young woman. We need to use that to jumpstart our conversation about what this visionary city looks like. And so I'm going to tell you that as mayor, I'm going to make it a priority. I'm going to listen to my citizens. 75% say they want the vision city. 84% say they want light rail. If we are good stewards of this city, if we are planning, not just for the next 2 years and the next budget, but if we are looking down the road at 2040, when we're going to have 1.2 million residents in this city, we need to look at a great public transit plan. We're not going to be able to continue with the road. Every time we build a road, by the time we build that road and cut that ribbon and open it, it's obsolete. We can't continue to do that. We have to embrace public transportation, and we have to be willing to be creative and find ways to fund it.
So one of the things you brought up in your questionnaire, and it's also something somebody in the audience mentioned Q&A, was land use. How would you change the city's land use policies to better support the kind of transit city you're talking about?
So we're going to have to, and I know this is a terrible word, Christof. Nobody's going to want to hear this, but density. Okay, nobody wants to talk about density and creating density, but we have to have this strategy for growth. You know, we have to be willing to create urban villages. And you know, when you talk to a lot of millennials, they want walkability. They want to be able to walk that last mile. They don't want a car. They don't want a truck. They don't want a car payment. They want to be able to get on public transit and go where they want to go. So I think, you know, I'm from West Texas. I love the wide open West, but I also know that as a good steward of this state, as a good steward of this city, we have to look at the future and understand that we're going to have to relook at how we imagine this city. And we're going to need input from every one of our residents on how we're going to get there.
You also talked about listening to the public. How would you do that?
Oh, I do it right now. Christof, I am out every day listening to people. I talk to everybody. Doesn't matter who you are, where you live. I'm going to talk to you about what your needs are. And I think a good mayor will be available to listen to all the citizens and not read the tea leaves, but listen to what is being said.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go in for a final commercial break.
That's right, Christof. Thank you so much. We're going to hear a little bit more from our friend Haley Freeler.
Hello, everybody, and I'm popping in one last time to just say thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Mayoral Candidate Forum. If this is something that positively impacted you and you'd like to continue to support TTA, there are a lot of different ways that you can get involved. One of those ways is to become a member of our alliance, and you can do so for as little as $10 a month. We also have many other levels of membership that you can be part of. You can also make a one-time donation if a membership is not necessarily something that resonates with you right now, but you'd still like to support our mission financially. You can also donate your time by becoming a committee member on one of the various committees we have listed on the website. Or you can serve in any of the current initiatives we have going on, like our Glen Park bus stop project that we have that's currently positively impacting ridership in the Glen Park community. If any of these things interest you, please check out our website at tarranttransitalliance.org, or you can email Rachel at tarranttransitalliance.org, and she'll be happy to set you up with whatever you need. We look forward to having you as part of our alliance, and we hope you all enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Haley, thank you so much. And Christof, back to you.
Sounds good. And we will now go to our last question. We have this set up for 1 minute per candidate. How will you support public transit advocacy efforts with partners like TTA? So your last chance for today to speak up, and we will start with Maddie Parker.
Well, I'd like to just remind everybody, I mean, I've really spent 17 years of a career working with groups like TTA, helping them understand how to make their voices heard at multiple levels of government. I'm really proud of the work TTA has done in a really short amount of time. They've really professionalized what their advocacy efforts are. I think the best example is that Transit Moves plan. I mean, as mayor, I think our number one responsibility is to have a listening ear, shoot straight, absolutely be clear communication on the issues that we agree on, the ones we don't, and then help advocacy organizations like they're already doing, reaching out across the community, whether it be the chamber, business leaders, citizens, et cetera, to best understand what opportunities there are at City Hall. We really need to demystify the process. And I think I've seen that happen a few times in the past, especially during budget hearings. How can we make sure that TTA has the best voice, a seat at the table to advocate for their issues?
Thank you. Let's go to DC Caldwell next.
I will admit that I've been spending much of the past couple minutes trying to respond to the Q&A questions that were typed up by participants because, well, it is my interest here to address the attendees. My focus in transit is in trying to create a more efficient system, which is primarily a more feasible system. Having homeless shelters and not people in them is not feasible. Having buses that are empty is not feasible, even if it doesn't theoretically cost a whole lot to run the bus. I want our systems to be actually used by the residents, and that means addressing residents' concerns individually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's go to Steve.
All right, well, thank you so much. What an honor it is to be with you this evening. In the multitude of counsel, there's wisdom. And so I plan on working with people like you, forums like this, listening to our public and working with our city. I'm believing the best is yet to come in Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you very much. And we will go to Brian Byrd.
Okay, so you guys get the award for the most creative forum yet with commercials, and thank you. It makes it fun. We're doing a lot of these right now, so when you juice it up like this, it's fun. So given the imbalance in our tech space, right, the mayor needs to set balanced expectations to find the right win for transit, both in how much money we're going to spend on it, and secondly, in how transit's going to feed us and help us right the ship on the imbalance of our tech space. We have to be responsible stewards of taxpayer money. We just do. And lastly, the mayor needs to drive the discussion and bring groups together. When we keep talking about it, new ideas pop up. Somebody comes up with something. Oh, I just talked to a corporation that's thinking about moving to Fort Worth. All right, well, let's tell them the latest thing we're working on in transit and see if that makes a difference. You need to bring everybody to the table, and the mayor can be a great convener for that. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And let's go with Deborah Peoples next.
Thank you. So Christof, I spent 32 years working in corporate America, and I know that the way you achieve success is by collaboration and relying on experts. And so I am proud to tell everyone I give my $10 a month to TTA because I want to know what's going on. I see them as experts that need to be at the table to help craft this discussion on where we need to go. I see our citizens as being equal stakeholders in being at the table to see where we need to go. And when we stop short and let things like budget and stuff restrict us in the way that we dream and the plans that we have for the city, we are selling our city short. I will never do that, ever, because I want us to be this incredible world-class city that we can be and we are in the process of becoming.
Thank you very much. And finally, Ann Zeta.
So I was a founding board member of TTA. So clearly I have been advocating and working alongside all of you from the beginning of the organization. I have a hard time taking credit for things, and I know there were rumblings about creating something like TTA before I came forward with my efforts in 2017 to try to find some additional creative ways of funding transit in Fort Worth. But that was kind of the beginning of this organization. So in my mayoral priorities, advocating, educating, and helping bring financial partners together, which is the mission of TTA, will be a high priority for me as mayor. And working alongside all of the folks that do the land use and the complete streets and Vision Zero and all of the policies that we've already adopted in the city that support a world-class public transit system will be high priorities for me as well. And we will get to be that visionary city that is supported by real estate council, the chamber, the county, and individuals that live here.
Thank you very much. And I really thank all the candidates for your time today, as well as the time spent answering the candidate questionnaire. I've really appreciated the engagement with these issues. I think that nationally, we are at a critical moment for transit, that transit agencies have had to struggle with COVID and actually been in the position to discourage people from riding transit for public safety, which has been a very unusual place to be in. And I think bus operators have been frontline workers who have been dealing with this pandemic. But at the same time, I think COVID has also shown us how essential transit is, that transit is something that keeps cities working, that keeps the essential personnel that run our cities able to do their jobs. And it feels like Fort Worth is really at a pivotal moment. This is a very fast growing city, a lot of new jobs, a lot of new people, and a real chance to build a transit network that can support that growth. But what that will take is real attention. It will take funding. It will take real conversations about priorities. It will take making good decisions about what kind of service to put where. And the city of Fort Worth plays a major role in that, appointing a majority of the Trinity Metro Board, funding those services, but also in lots of other ways. Those buses stop on City of Fort Worth streets. And so those bus stops are on City of Fort Worth sidewalks, and people are using those city sidewalks to get from the bus to their final destination. And as mentioned multiple times, land use is part of this too. The city drives, sets the land use regulations that ultimately will determine how useful transit is for everyone. So for everyone watching today, this decision about who the next mayor is a decision about what kind of city this can be and what kind of transit network it can have. So I'd also like to thank all of our audience for spending your time with us today and listening to that. And so I will hand it back to Rachel.
Rachel,
One second. Yes, I'm here. Thanks so much. Sorry, muting is a whole thing. Christof, thank you so much for spending your time today. And Hewitt Zollers, thank you for sponsoring us this evening. Candidates, thank you all so much for your time. Attendees, thank you for being here. Just a few more things that I want to mention about the Tarrant Transit Alliance. First of all, come follow us on social media, visit our website, contact us directly. That's my email address right over there that you can use to send us an email if there's a follow-up question that you want to share with the candidates. We will be going through the Q&A and sharing it with the candidates as well and saying, hey, if you want to answer these, we'll publish them on our website. Speaking of publishing on our website, we want to make sure that you're going to our website to check out that voter's guide. Also, we would love to mention that there are ways that you can support the work that we are doing. We would love for you to be a part of our coalition through annual sponsorships, corporate memberships, or individual patronage. Come be an advocate with us for the future of our city. Finally, there's a few other mayoral candidate and city council candidate forums coming up, including our friends at Steer Fort Worth. So make sure that you check those out. They've already hosted their March 18th forum for districts 2 through 5, but on April 7th, they will have a forum for districts 6 through 9. And you'll be able to hear from these candidates again on April 21st. And so they will ask other questions that aren't transit related, but you'll have a better idea of who you want to choose as your next mayor. Finally, we have a post-event survey that we'd love to send out to you all. We'll ask questions like, hey, do you want to join our mailing list? What did you think about this program today, to give us some feedback? And we will also, at the very end of that survey, have a button that you can press that will take you directly to that transit voters guide. That's all that I have. Andre, do you want to say anything else?
I just want to say thank you to each of you for your service that you've given to this city before becoming the mayor, whichever one each of you are selected, but you've given service already. So thank you. As a Fort Worth native, as I am, I just want to say thank you to each of you, and thank you for your energy and passion of bringing this city together and moving it to the 12th or 11th or 10th largest city in the country. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you all.